I have a deep fear that I really want to address with you guys that the NIL is ruining college football. And there's a lot that I've seen over the past year or so that make me feel this way. But this whole situation that just came up recently has really reaffirmed my fears that the NIL is going to be the complete destruction of college football. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Social Club where everyone has a voice. I'm your host, Jacob Hale, and we have a very great episode for you. But real quick, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like and comment, let us know your thoughts, what's going on in the world, what's going on in sports. We cover a lot of things, okay? A lot of things in the sports world for sure. So just let us know what's on your mind, what you like to hear. You can also follow us on Instagram at The Social Club, where we post content every single day. Again, we want to hear your thoughts. So we enjoy all the comments and support that we've gotten so far. And best that we can say is just keep it going. You know, we appreciate it. We do our best to respond to all the comments, but it's a lot, so we're trying our best. But anyway, so first, I want to talk about the situation, and then I want to talk about some steps that the NCAA can do to actually fix the NIL, because one thing I think we all can agree on is that players should be paid. There's nothing wrong with that. If a school or organization is making millions of dollars off of the backs of amateurs or students, they should get some type of compensation for that. I don't think anyone really disagrees with me on that point. But moreover, this is just way out of hand. There needs to be some type of regulations or guidelines. But first, let me address what happened recently. A lot of you guys have definitely heard about the Nico Iamaleava situation with Tennessee, but for those of you who don't know, I'll give you a quick recap. It's that Nico Iamaleava, which I'm just going to call him Nico for now on, refer to him as that, but he was the starting QB for Tennessee. He came in as a true freshman, ended up playing, brought Tennessee to the playoffs last year, did a pretty solid job. Good, not great performance, to be real with you, but still good enough to play, good enough to bring him into the playoffs, so there's that. But his NIL deal was $2.5 million guaranteed, somewhere in that range. So he went through all of spring camp and then got to the point to where he wanted to start looking around to see if there were better NIL deals and offers going from different teams. And if he liked it, then he was going to transfer out of Tennessee and go to a different team. So in the middle of that, he was also within negotiations for Tennessee to where he was like, well, I feel like I should be getting paid more because I'm going to be coming in as a second-year starter. I'm going to be the guy. I should get more money, basically. Well, during those talks, Dan Lanning, the Oregon QB, overheard or must have gotten a call or at least heard about Nico looking around searching for different deals. So he got the confirmation from that, send that to Tennessee. Tennessee wasn't happy about it, decided, you know what, we're just going to let you go. We're going to release you all together and let you go find a new home and find the NIL money that you're looking for. My initial thoughts with that is I don't think there's necessarily a bad guy. It's more of a situation of circumstance. So if I'm Nico, $2.5 million is life-changing money. So let's be clear about that. But with that being said, if you know you can make an extra $1 million, you know you can make an extra $2 million, why not push for that? You know, the game is not guaranteed. Every single play really could be your last, especially in the QB position, especially in the SEC. So in that regard, I do understand you got to get as much money as you can with the amount of time that you have to get that money, because you never know what's going to happen. So in that respect, I don't really fault him for that. On Tennessee's side, I don't fault them because in a sense, you're essentially getting blackmailed at this point to where you have an agreement, but then there's a different circumstance and there's a bigger, better offer that's being submitted. So now you're kind of getting forced to have to put up an even better deal just to keep someone that you already had contracted earlier, right? So Tennessee has their own standard. They're like, hey, you know, we're good. Enough's enough. We got enough people in the pool. We'll be fine. And for that, in that regard, I really don't blame them too, because I know that's very frustrating for you to have an agreement on something, just in life, to have an agreement on something and then someone comes back and asks for a bigger offer after you already agreed on a certain amount. That's frustrating in and of itself. Whether you have the money or you don't, you do have to have a certain standard for yourself. So for Tennessee as an organization to decide this is our standard, this is what we're going to go with, you decide what you want to do. I don't fault them for that either. my biggest blame for this really is the NCAA for letting this remain as the open Wild West with all these preliminary issues going on with NIL. NIL has been around for a couple years. There's enough time for you to see the effects, the good and the bad, and for you to start making decisions to at least try to mitigate or deter these very extreme situations that is just not good for the game, not good for the players, and not good for the coaches. So with my main point in this video, I do have some recommendations and what I think the NCAA can do. And what I would tell everyone is that you actually comment down below and give your thoughts and say, what can the NCAA do or what type of rules and guidelines they can have to fix this NIL situation that's going on right now. Actually, before I say, I do want to give a shout out to Coach Saban, and I want to give a shout out to Dabo Swinney because number one, Coach Saban did call this way early on, and he made it clear that was his reason for retiring on what he felt like the NIL was going to become, where it's a bunch of players that essentially are going to end up blackmailing the organization or the school for more money every year and try to upsell them at any chance they get, which causes even more frustration and stress while you're also trying to turn over the team and build up chemistry and build up culture and build up everything, right? So I have to give a shout out to Nick Saban because he was one of the first people to call that out, and that was his reason for retiring. Second one to Dabo Swinney, because Dabo Swinney made it clear, as big of an organization as Clemson is, we're not going to follow the same path as all these other schools. We're just throwing out the biggest amount of money we can towards players. We're going to pay these players, but at the same time, it's a real judgment on if you're going to stay here for the culture, for the teaching, and for the development, moreover than just the cash amount that we're willing to give you. So I have to give those two credit for that because they were way ahead of the curve on what's going on now. Another thing I want to say before I give my recommendations is a lot of people, I want to answer the question of why there should be guidelines in the first place if anyone's confused with it. The reason why there should be guidelines is for two things. One is to protect the players, and two, it's to protect the institution of college football. One thing that's going to be clear is that there's a difference between a kid that bounces around different organizations versus a kid that stays in one program. So if you stay in one program, I think Tom Brady talked about this, to be all fair, but a little bit of what he said and what I agree with is that if you stay in one program learning one system, you're going to be way better at it than going to 4 different programs learning 4 different systems. And that's going to hurt your development going into the league because when leagues actually draft appropriately, they draft towards players that would fit the scheme that they already have. Well, if you're not accustomed to any scheme, any terminology in that regard, it's all jumbled up. It's a lot harder for you to process what the NFL is going to be, which translates to your production on the field, which is the same thing for college football. You have so many kids traveling to so many different schools, learning so many different programs and ideologies and cultures. It shows up on the field on your performance to where it's not as good of a production as what you would like it to be. And to a degree, you kind of see that in college football. Hopefully it doesn't get worse, but if it does, this would be a clear sign of why, is that kids aren't staying in these programs long enough to really dive into this culture and to really understand the scheme and the offense or defense that they're playing into. And then the other hand, for the players, you have to protect the players. And there's so much money into this that a lot of people are going to be coming in bad faith to try to take them on that money. So there's plenty of stories of kids going to transfer to schools and the money's not there. Or kids having a bad agent and that agent is stiffing them for a lot of the money that they were supposedly guaranteed, right? So with all that money and circulating around, you also need to find regulations that also protect the players to make sure that they're not going to get taken advantage of when all they're trying to do is just make the most amount of money they can with the opportunity and the hard work that they've established themselves. All right, so I have 5 things that the NCAA can do going forward that will help and hopefully stabilize this NIL culture and bring some type of normalcy back into college football. Number 1, there needs to be a salary cap. My biggest reason why is because it hasn't happened yet, but I know it will happen at some point. You don't want a situation to where a small amount of teams is hoarding a disproportionate amount of the talent over just strictly money. It's a running joke, but if you think about it, if a billionaire decides that they want to spend $100 million into the school to build the ultimate team, what's really going to stop them from doing that? Or a Sally Prince decides that they like the University of Temple, what's stopping them from building up that team in that regard? It would be good to have a salary cap. The reason why you don't want a baseball situation to where it's literally the 5 teams with the biggest amount of money that's way overspending to get all of the good players to then become a dominant force. I know everyone wants to point out, well, Alabama did it before NIL and they were cheating and doing this, and the SEC was doing it and they were doing that. Listen, I get it. My thought into this is that it needs to be fair and it needs to be somewhat balanced. Like it's not going to be balanced. There's a Power 5, and within that Power 5, there's always really great teams, really great programs and stuff. But you want to keep it as balanced as you can, because at a certain point, it's going to be really useless for a lot of these programs over the fact that they can't just raise the money to get these players. And it kind of just defeats the purpose of a competitive league and what's going to be good for ratings and fans and stuff. People like an underdog story, whether you like it or not. It's good that there's at least a chance for that to keep happening. Or you just want Ohio State versus Alabama every single year. Your choice. Number 2, no NIL for first-year players. I think out of all the rules that I have for this, I think this is the only one that might get some pushback. But my reasoning for this might be a little bit more personal with my experience in college football and my friends that have experienced college football. Let me be clear. I did not play Division I. I did not receive any NIL money. But I don't think there should be NIL for a first-year player, because coming out of high school, going into college, your first year of college, from a development standpoint and who you're going to be, is the most important year probably of your life, of you actually leaving home and going to a new institution, going to a new culture, everything of that nature. It might be your biggest year, right? And this is for protection for the players, I don't want your decision of where you should go or what environment you should be in solely based off the money. The reason why is because, again, your development, I think, would be more important. You spending a year, not even making money, you can still get a full ride, but not making significant money, you actually making a decision whether this is the right environment, right culture, right thing for you going forward. I think that first year would do a lot of very positive things for college players. I mean, some kids, even if they want to play college football, is another big thing. There's a lot of players who came in the first year and decided, you know what, I actually just don't want to play. I want to do something else. So I think this puts a lot less stress and a lot less angst on the actual player. And it's even better for the organization, because, again, you're going to be paying millions of dollars for a kid that hasn't even walked into your facility and lifted a weight yet. So it's good to at least have them there for a year. And then at that point, they can even decide, well, should I leave? Like, keep your money, it's fine. Or I want to invest in here. Okay, you can give me the money that you feel like I'm entitled to, or whatever that I can sign on to and stuff. Number 3, there should be some type of transfer/exit fee. I think it's completely ridiculous in this Nico sense that he had $2.5 million guaranteed, and he's basically just walking away with that money. There has to be some type of guideline or something to where you have to make the money back. And when I think about that, I kind of think about corporate America in that sense, to where maybe you guys don't read the fine print, but in a lot of those sense, if they're giving you like a travel expense to help you move towards a job, or just in a standard clause, you're going to be owed a certain amount of money back if you were to leave in a certain period of time. Most corporations want you to stay at least for 1 to 2 years, and then there won't be an issue with anything, right? But in a lot of corporations, like if you leave within, let's say, 6 months and you say you got a better job, there is probably a certain amount of money that you probably owe back to that corporation. That is a very real thing. And I think it should be the same thing for college football. If I paid you for a year and you leave within 6 months, I should be entitled to at least a portion of that NIL back into the program. Now, whatever it's going to be, they can figure it out. They can make it a flat fee. I think it should be based on the player, like a Nico situation. You should probably get 25, 35, even 50% of the money back, something like that. But that's not going to be for everyone. Not everyone's making millions of dollars off an NIL. So they need to figure out what the numbers are and what's going to work best for the institution in that regard. And also, again, it's a natural deterrent. Another example that I thought about was Proctor in that situation where he committed to Iowa, was guaranteed a certain amount of money, pretty much secured the money, and then retransferred back into Alabama. And it's like, if the money hits your account and you leave, wouldn't that just be your money now? Like they can't get that money back, if I'm right. So they should do something to where they can actually get that money back, because that is insane. That is completely ridiculous. Next thing I have on my list is that there needs to be a definitive, I call it a trade deadline, but really just a transfer deadline. There needs to be a way more sharper and definitive transfer deadline. And honestly, to carry that further, I think there needs to be a limit on how many times you can hit the transfer portal per year. In my head, I think it should only be one, and then you can petition for another one depending on a certain circumstance. Like if you transferred out of somewhere and then a family member dies, and then you're like, oh, I want to transfer somewhere else to be closer to home. That would be a time where that's a gray area where I feel like you can elect to ask to be transferred again in that year time, and then the NCAA can grant you that, right? But I think there needs to be transfer limits. And again, it's a similar situation where I said before with Proctor, where it's like, if you're just going to bounce around from school to school, one, it's not good for the player, because for the player, it takes a while for you to get accustomed to a system. This isn't Madden Ultimate Team. You can't just pick and plug a player and like, all right, be good, right? You got to learn terminology, schemes, playbooks, team culture, all that stuff. All that stuff comes into play. So for a kid to, let's say, go through spring practice and then transfer out, then go through summer workouts on a different team and then transfer out and then go through another team, it's like, that's not productive for the player at all. And then from the institution, that's even worse, because it's like, they spend all that time developing that program, teaching you, helping you, staying with you in film sessions and stuff, just for you to jump ship just because there's an extra $10,000, $100,000 at a different school. So I do think there needs to be a limit. And I also think there needs to be a definitive deadline. My suggestion for a deadline, I think it should start right at the conclusion of the college football championship game, so no one transfers out during the playoffs at all. And then it should go all the way into probably the first week of August, if not just slightly back, maybe the last week of July, like August 1st type of thing. My reason why is that at the most, at least give the player a couple weeks with the team doing two-a-days right before the actual season. So then you eliminate anyone transferring out in the middle of the season, because I think that's kind of ridiculous. And then you also eliminate people transferring out during playoffs or right in the middle of workouts. But also, it's good for the player, because then the player can work out, go through spring training, realize they're not going to play, and then that still gives them the ability to transfer and go find a different place and give them enough time to learn a system and be in a position to play going into the fall, but while still having good production on the field, like a good piece of work on the field. And then the last thing, I debated what my last thing was going to be. I thought of a few. There's some honorable mentions I have up there of like school fines is definitely was something I was floating on, whether schools are able to fine people, like if you're late to class, if you're late to a meeting, if you get into a speeding accident like the University of Georgia and all of their players. But my last one and my number 5 to where I think they need to adopt, I actually think there needs to be an independent branch of the NCAA that acts as somewhat of a legal branch to oversee these contracts that are being written up and signed by the players. My reason why for that, I'm thinking of somewhat of a checks and balance, kind of like an ethics branch. Maybe it's not even the NCAA. Maybe it's like a school, from school to school, they have to supply that or something. But someone needs to read these contracts. I think the next big domino to fall, and I'm predicting this, the next big domino to fall is that there's going to be a loan shark company or something there, kind of like, and they're going to treat this kind of like a music industry style, to where we're going to front you the money and then you're going to pay us the money back over a period of time with very high interest rates for us to make 5 to 10x our money. I think of it like this. What if someone goes up to Nico and they're like, if you stay at Tennessee, we'll front you an extra $2 million. But written in that clause with that $2 million, he actually has to pay back what's going to be the equivalent of $5 to $10 million. What if that's written in the contract, he signs off on it, and then he ends up not going to the league to be able to pay that? Then he's stuck now with millions of dollars worth of debt that you'd have to pay back with interest to this loan company, only because they fronted him $2 million up front and they didn't read the contract, or they did, but didn't take into account the finance involved with that, right? Again, these are 18 to 21-year-olds, maybe 24 and higher, whatever. But a lot of these kids are very young, and you're expecting these very young kids to then have a family dynamic that's financially savvy enough to read these contracts and understand what these kids are signing up to and what they're guaranteed and what they're not guaranteed. It's a disaster waiting to happen. You can't expect all of these kids to have that good of an upbringing, that good of an agent, that good of an organization around him that sees his best interest, that's going to make sure he doesn't sign a bad contract. It's going to happen. So the NCAA needs to do something about this, to where, okay, the kid can sign, but you have to submit this in a certain amount of time, or else the contract's going to be voided for whatever reason, right? There has to be a stamp of approval to make sure these kids aren't getting screwed over. I'm going to feel so bad for the first kid, and maybe there is a kid already that we just don't know about, that's going to get screwed over and get placed in millions of dollars worth of debt over a contract that he didn't think to read out, or maybe a contract he didn't understand. So in closing, what I would say is that NIL is a very serious problem right now. I think it's great, and the idea is great, but we can't let this be a lawless entity of the NCAA, because it's clearly going to ruin the brand of college football and what all of us as fans actually enjoy about watching college football and what it brings. So this is my advice. I'm hoping someone in the NCAA watches this video. Actually, guys, please help me out. Tag the NCAA into this video, and at least let them consider this. I know, I get it. This is a huge money pit. Everyone's making cash, under the table deals, everything like that. But there's so much disaster that's on the horizon for this. I hope if more of us keep speaking out on this, it's going to force the league, the NCAA, the school, whatever, to have to do something about this, because I see nothing but trouble coming on the horizon with this. And all it's going to do is mess up our fan experience of us actually watching these games and enjoying these teams. But with that being said, I've talked quite enough. You guys definitely like, follow, subscribe. Check out our other videos. We got a lot more content on the way. But other than that, we'll see you guys in the next one.